I'm back, and I'm back with a prediction video because, you know what, I'm bored. I want to do some predictions, and we got an interesting fight coming up this weekend that I'm just really looking forward to be completely honest. I'm real excited for this little Showtime triple header this weekend, headlined by WBC featherweight champion for the past 7 years. Only defended his title 5 times, but nevertheless still been champion a while. Gary Russell Jr. defending his WBC title against Filipino challenger Mark Magnifico Magsayo. Well, let's just get into this matchup. Gary Russell, been a long-standing champion for quite a long time. Obviously, he's been a champion since 2015. Got his first world title shot in 2014 against Loma. Got schooled by Loma, but came back, had a tune-up fight in between that and then challenging for the WBC belt against Johnny Gonzalez, who himself had just knocked out Abner Mares. Managed to take Gonzalez out in, I think, 4 rounds, or 3 or 4 rounds. Pretty much whooped up on him. And then proceeded to defend his title against guys like Patrick Hyland, Oscar Escandón, and then eventually what would be probably his career best win, arguably, to date. Well, I'd say it is. Jojo Diaz, who himself became a champion at 130 and held wins over Rene Alvarado and Jesus Rojas, and then eventually Javier Fortuna and Tevin Farmer at 130 and 135. He managed to pretty much pick apart and beat Jojo Diaz in comfortable fashion, and that's the best performance of his career to date. He looked fantastic in that fight, taking apart Jojo, who had effectively cleaned out his stable of fighters at 126, at Golden Boy. And, that was a brilliant performance by Russell, and a performance I don't think he gets enough credit for, but, I thought he actually handled him a bit better than, say, Haney did, who actually had problems with Jojo, But, nevertheless, Gary holds that victory. Gary Russell would go on in the following year to defeat Kiko Martinez. Technically was a bit of an inconsequential fight, but fair play to Martinez. He scored I'd say pretty easily the upset of the year last year, knocking out Kid Galahad. So I guess that win's gone on to age pretty well. That upset still shocks me to this very day, but yeah, he knocks out Galahad, becomes a world champion, so that's a win on Gary's resume. Yeah, a future world champion, and former too, in Kiko Martinez. And, well, he also holds a win in his last defense against Tugstad Nyambiar. And that's it since 2015 in terms of title fights for Gary. But you know what? Even though he's been very, very inactive, I gotta say, he's had a pretty decent quality of title defenses. I mean, overall, these are good fights, especially at the time. Escandón was lurking around, I think at one point, like Rigo's mandatory, at 122. Jojo Diaz, we see what he's got on to do. Tugstad Nyambiar just beaten he had just beaten Claudio Marrero and Oscar Escandón himself, and gone on to lose against Colbert and beat Kobe Abridi. He's actually fighting on the triple header himself, but these are some good wins that Gary holds on his record. He's got the best resume at 126. He's been there for the longest too, but still, not too bad. He's been kind of hampered by the fact that he's never been able to get the Leo Santa Cruz fight, which, is a shame. He's never gotten a unification at this stage in his career, and still remains to have not been able to get one, but I mean, I hope he does eventually, at some point before he retires, because he's 33, going on 34 years old or something like that, and he still hasn't gotten a legacy-defining fight, but I don't know. But on to the challenger, Mark Magsayo. Magsayo first hit U.S. shores, at least as a well-known commodity, last year. He headlined a show late last year against come forward pressure fighter Rigoberto Hermosillo. And, you know, he showed good flashes in that fight. But as a whole, I wasn't impressed, because I thought he lost. And I thought they kind of gifted him that split decision. I thought he got outworked, outlanded most of the fight. Thought he got hurt to the body in a couple of occasions. I thought he tired a bit too early on, blew his load. But he had some decent performances too, you know. Knocked out Pablo Cruz last year. Had a pretty dominant decision victory against a past his prime, but still an experienced Ponglang Sorsinyu. And also in his last fight, which also I guess wasn't the most impressive either, but managed to score a devastating possible knockout of the year against Julio Ceja. So at least you can give him that. But, you know, Magsayo is a very volatile fighter. When it comes to his performances and his overall ability, he's limited. He's a freakish athlete. He's very quick-handed. He's got pretty quick feet. He has power that carries late, even when he's tired, even when he's exhausted and hurt. He still hits hard. He still hurt Hermosillo late in the fight, in like the 9th or 10th. The guy still has like tremendous tenacity and physical gifts. However, he does have a lot of flaws. You know, he's good in combination. He's can punch on the move very well, actually, you know, which is also a testament to his physical gifts and his coordination. He's got good timing and things of that nature. He's a very good counterpuncher. And overall, he's got great punch technique. But he's not a particularly adept pressure fighter. He's open to and susceptible to the body. He's also... He tends to not really look after his stamina too well. He doesn't really have the best fight IQ. He tends to go a bit too reckless. He tends to commit to too many punches, and he always throws with bad intent. There's not really too many layers to his game. And I think that could potentially hurt him in this fight. In the Julio Ceja fight, he had to come from behind in order to win. Ceja was putting up an absolute beating, to be honest. Pressuring him, hurting him, knocked him down, I think, in the 5th round, after getting dropped early on himself. And eventually, Magsayo started letting his hands go a bit more in the 8th and the 9th rounds, and then in the 10th round eventually took Julio Ceja's head off. So, to his credit, good for him there. But, you know, especially when he's on the back foot, he doesn't really work off his pivots very much. He's very vanilla with his footwork. He lets guys into the pocket too easily. He's very crude. And Gary Russell, technically, is a fantastic fighter. You know, I get a lot of people give him flack for his inactivity, and reality is I like both fighters, but Gary is beautiful to watch in the ring. He does have flaws. He himself is actually susceptible to the body, but at the same time, what I can give him is the fact that he has very good spatial awareness in terms of where he is compared to his opponent, timing his opponent at mid and long range, despite the fact that he's usually at a reach disadvantage. He's got good subtle footwork on the back foot. He's not the best coming forward. He's a bit more crude, but you know, especially if you get guys who can move and can turn him. But when someone's coming forward on him, he's patient, he is surgical, he is methodical, and he's one of the best to watch in that regard. He's got a good body attack. He's got a very wide array of punches in his arsenal. Great right hook over the top as a counter. Great straight left to the body. Can control opponents off of his jab like he did with Nyambayar, and his physical gifts can allow for him to overwhelm guys with his hand speed, his athleticism, and things of that nature. So, overall, I think this is a step too far for Magsayo. Now, Gary's been very inactive. He's been out of the ring for 2 years, whereas Magsayo has fought, like, what, 4 times since then? So, potentially, maybe Gary shows up flat. But based on what I've seen, assuming both guys show up like they usually show up, Magsayo has to show me something that he hasn't shown before in this fight in order to win, or he has to clip Gary, which entails him just timing him with a great shot, or maybe Gary just getting too overconfident and exchanging, and potentially, like a wounded animal, he comes back and tries to hurt Russell, and maybe ends up being able to take him out. But I just don't see it. I think this is a step too far for Magsayo. I think in the early rounds, Gary is going to be a little bit circumspect, a little bit wary of the power. I think he's going to sort of try to feel him out, but I think eventually in the 3rd and 4th rounds, he's going to start to turn Magsayo over and over and over and over and over again. And I think that's just going to be the story of the fight. He's going to force Magsayo to overreach. He's going to start countering him with big shots. He's going to start to throw punches with more velocity and commitment as the fight increases on. And I think he's going to stop Magsayo. Whether he stops Magsayo via referee stoppage or maybe even a body shot, I don't know. I'm thinking a referee stoppage. I think he's going to pile on the punishment. I think Magsayo's going to remain valiant and try to punch back, but I just think Gary's going to be too smart, too quick, too smart, and I just think this is just a step too far in competition for Magsayo, but maybe he can land something and pull it off. I like both, so best of luck to both.